Welcome, one and all, to Learn Japanese Pod, and you're listening to the Fun Friday edition, where we temporarily put down our Japanese textbooks and talk to cool people doing cool things in Japan. And in this episode, I'm joined by a veteran of Japan and my very good friend, Andy. Andy, how the devil are you?
So you find cool people to talk about cool things. However,
we've got
this week.
Andy. How are you? You good?
I think it's safe to say that 2020 is now the crappiest year of everybody's life, no matter how old or young you are. It's a year that I am looking forward to writing off already. So with that in mind, let's have fun.
Right. I kind of feel like, there should have been another scene in Back to the Future where Doc says to Marty, whatever you do, don't set this to 2020.
Right. Exactly.
It's just like the worst year. But we're keeping our chins up.
Sure.
And keeping our stiff upper lips as we do in Japan and the UK. So I thought it would be fun to do another Fun Friday and check in with Andy and check in with you lovely Learn Japanese Pod listeners. And I hope all of you are safe and well and not going completely nuts during the coronavirus lockdown. I think Andy and I have tales of going crazy here in Japan, which we'll talk about a bit later. But in today's podcast, I thought Andy and I could talk about what's been going on in our lives, also our take on the coronavirus situation here in Japan. Plus, I'm sure we're going to go off track, go off on some meandering tangent and talk about whatever random stuff happens to float into our brains. Don't forget, people, you can get access to this podcast with the new app, which is out for both iPhone and Android. Just visit learnjapanesepod.com. That's learnjapanesepod.com. And click on the link at the top of the page to download. It's very easy. So I thought, Andy, if you're up for this, we could warm up with a little coronavirus quiz.
I'm up for it. Although it bears mentioning to the listening audience that we have not rehearsed said quiz, and you are springing it on me.
I'm springing this on you, Andy. I'm gonna start easy and then get progressively harder. But don't worry, maybe a swig of beer will help. So, number one, start off easy. How do you say surgical mask in Japanese?
Masku.
That's it. Ping pong. That's 1 point. So for 20 yen, number two.
And by the way, it's worth noting that if you see it, like, for example, if you're looking for masks or anything like that in the convenience store, and they're all sold out right now, mask is spelled in katakana, so it's easy to pick out for foreigners.
Mask. Yeah, so you can't get them for love nor money in these parts. I was lucky that my friend's mother, who's a nurse, managed to get some extra masks that she had. So I'm using like a military grade surgical masks at the moment, which is quite funny.
My sister-in-law,
yes,
taking this quiz completely off the rails. My sister-in-law made me this kind of homemade mask, right?
Oh my God, that's adorable.
Isn't it? It's great. So she made masks for my whole family, my wife, my daughter, and myself. Very nice person. However, apparently the distance from the front of face to ears is different with most people and my head. So I actually had to retrofit this with some extra shoelaces, elastic shoelaces. So I've got the adjustable thing. I thought.
Oh, you adjusted it. Oh, Oh, well, you modified the mask.
I hacked it.
It's got an interesting pattern on it. I like that. Question number 2. This is a bit harder. What is Abe no mask? Can you explain to our listeners what the Abe no mask is?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, so we have to take the way back machine.
Sure.
To the faltering economic recovery of years gone by.
Sure.
And Abe, what's his first name?
Shinzo
Abe, that's right. So Shinzo Abe, the Prime Minister of Japan, has an economic plan, which by all measure has not done well, but it's a plan nonetheless. And it was called Abenomics.
Right.
So Abenomics, economics, Abenomics. That has not worked out so well, right? Just hasn't worked out terribly. Just hasn't done much of anything. So now he has Abe no mask, which is his. Apparently, we're all going to get masks in the mail.
Right.
I have not.
Right.
Which only goes to show that he is enjoying similar success with Abenomics and Abe no mask. But apparently, we'll get masks at some point.
Yeah, and it was pretty much derided on social media because this leads to the bonus question.
Oh, no.
Do you know how many masks for each household?
That's a question I won't get. I'm going to guess that it's one per registered person.
Oh, very close. It was 2.
Oh, there you go. Are they paper or cloth?
They're cloth masks.
Well, there you go. So you can always wear one. You can wash the other one.
Exactly. Yeah. But it was kind of derided in the media because they said, well, if you've got a family, what are you going to do with 2 masks? And, there's only so many times they are cloth.
Wait, you're only getting 2 per family?
Yes.
Oh, geez, I thought you said 2 per person. So,
yeah.
Well, okay, so this is the reasoning. I'm sure this is the reasoning. And by the way, I have no idea if I'm right, but I just know I'm right. Is that they're trying to encourage only one person to leave the house for essential stuff at a time.
Yeah.
So you really only one person should be leaving the house to go shopping or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, you have one mask that's being worn by the person who's going out, and at the same time, the second mask is being washed for that same person. So I guess it may, it's dodgy, and I can see why it's being ridiculed, but it falls into a narrative of only leave the house when you absolutely need it, which nobody, by the way, is doing.
And as you said before, not everyone has got the masks. Friends of mine haven't got theirs yet. I got mine a month ago. Go Shibuya-ku.
It's a sad state of affairs when I've gotten my U.S. economic stimulus check before my Abe no mask.
Oh, no way.
Right.
Oh, well done. Well done.
Dinner's on me next time.
Dinner's on you. Oh, great. Awesome. Whenever that is, whenever we can meet, right?
Well, I didn't mean with you. I mean...
I'm buying dinner for myself. You can have like a Game of Thrones style roast ball with an apple in its mouth. You can spend it all on this dinner, right?
And you get the apple.
I get the apple. Thank you. Well, it's one apple more than I have now. Okay, good. Question number 3. How do you say coronavirus in Japanese?
Coronavirus?
Yeah, very good. Yeah, coronavirus. Very good.
Virus is. Yeah. I've seen it written. I haven't seen heard too many people say it, but
So my pronunciation isn't great, but it kind of sounds a bit like wheels in English, and a virus. Virus. Yeah. So I always thought, why are you talking about wheels? But it's a virus. Coronavirus. Or if you want to be really technical, it's shingata coronavirus. So shingata means novel. It's a new virus that hasn't been discovered by humans before. Okay, this is a bit of a harder one, actually. How do you say vaccine in Japanese?
I have no idea. You stumped me.
It's actually wakuchin. Wakuchin.
So they've taken the English and made it unnecessarily unrecognizable.
Yes. It's one of these like really hard words, yeah. And like virus always screws me up, like virus. Virus.
Because there's a va, right?
Yeah, but they can't say V, so they put a wa. So wakuchin. So I heard that word for ages. I couldn't work out what it was. So there you go. Okay, next one. Who is the governor of Tokyo? This leads into my next question.
I can see her face. Starts with a K?
Yes, starts with a K.
Kiyuki?
Koike. Yeah, Koike.
That's
very good, very good. You got that. You got it. Okay. Now this is a bit of a harder one. What was the name of the social distancing campaign enacted by the governor of Tokyo? What did she call it?
Step back, yo.
It sounds more like a threat. Yo, step back, yo. It was actually Mitsu no Mitsu. So
I've heard this, and I had no idea what this means. 3's 3.
Right, yeah, good. So the first mitsu means 3, and then the other mitsu just means density, but it's used with other words to mean various things to do with crowded places. So the 3 mitsu are, number 1 is mippei no kukan, so avoid places with bad ventilation. Number 2 was mishu basho, so avoid large crowds. And number 3 was misetsu bamen, avoid conversation in close proximity to other people. So basically, avoid bad ventilation, avoid large crowds, avoid screaming in someone's face. So the worst possible place for that would be a nightclub, right?
Sure.
Because you're in a small enclosed space with no ventilation, screaming at people over some terrible Euro trash or whatever they're listening to these days. And that was actually where most of the coronavirus was being spread in Tokyo. So those are the 3 places to avoid.
So I feel like my isolation has been more than just social, because this is all stuff that I'm hearing for the first time. Now I'll say, this is my personal opinion, is the nightclub scene is not as huge in Japan as it is in other parts of the world. And perhaps it's because of the graying of Japan, and perhaps it's just nightclubs and discos are just not the hub of Japanese social life. It's just not. Izakayas are, and I would have thought the izakayas and probably like that Shinjuku. Where's the section by Shinjuku? I know it by its inappropriate name.
Kabukicho. Right?
Kabukicho, exactly right.
Yeah, right.
I would have thought places like that would have been hotbeds, because you've got people that are by wood surfaces and they're right next to each other and they're talking close because of the intimacy of the thing. Yeah. But I wouldn't have thought that nightclubs. I know nightclubs in Seoul have been the place where things have gotten crazy, but in Korea, nightclubs are far more ubiquitous.
One of the places that was a vector for spreading the virus was a nightclub in Japan somewhere.
Really?
They're very few and far between. Roughly 1 million years ago when I first came to Japan, there was a nightclub scene in Tokyo that rivaled most places. But now, as you said, because of...
It's Roppongi now, and that's about it in Tokyo.
Basically, if that, yeah. And so the nightclub scene is pretty much dead in Japan, I would say, compared to other places.
Yeah, you're not missing anything.
Not missing anything at all. Okay, so yeah, very good. So it's Mitsu no Mitsu.
Mitsu no Mitsu. Okay, there you
Mitsu no Mitsu. And it was very funny because Koike-san was being interviewed and the phrase was Mitsu desu. So it's the Mitsus. It's don't forget these 3 things to stay safe. It was sampled, and you can search on YouTube for various EDM mixes with Koike-san go Mitsu desu, Mitsu desu, Mitsu desu. It's very, very silly. It's a whole new musical genre. Okay, so next question.
Wait, we're still on the quiz?
We're still on the quiz.
How long is this podcast going to be?
This is going to go on a week. I mean, what plans have you got? What plans have you got this week?
What do you have better to do?
Okay, question number 7. Here we go. True or false? Prime Minister Abe declared a strict lockdown in Tokyo and other regions around Japan. True or false?
I think that's false.
Correct. Why?
Because it's unconstitutional.
Very good. Yeah. Full points. Yeah, very good, very good.
Yeah. It's actually, now this is the interesting thing. There's a lot of things that are written into the Japanese Constitution that are artifacts of what the West imposed upon Japan to keep it from basically starting another war. Where this comes from, I don't know. If this particular clause in the Constitution is part of that, I'm not sure, but it would be interesting for somebody who studies Japanese and perhaps has a podcast where they could disseminate that kind of information. Could go ahead and look it up for me and let me know.
Right, yeah. I don't know, but my educated guess would be when they were redrafting the Constitution at the end of the war with McCarthy, I'm guessing they probably did it then. Probably.
Yeah, I'm sure it's like, hey, do we want to be able to declare martial law? Because maybe not so much.
Maybe not. Okay. Last question. So the last coronavirus related question is 32-point floating math is calculated using 1 sign bit, an 8-bit exponent, and a 23-bit
mantissa.
Very good. Excellent. Well done. You passed the quiz with flying colors. Well done. And is a smart lad.
I by the way, I will pay you sans and yen to actually keep that in the podcast.
Oh, I'm keeping it. I'm keeping it. I'm keeping it. Andy, what has your lockdown experience been like in Tokyo?
Well, as we've just determined, it's actually not a lockdown because, Alex, as you'll look back, way back 23 seconds ago, we can't have a lockdown in Japan. And it's,
right.
I'll be honest with you, it's been a bit surreal because you hear the news from the West and you see these numbers come from the States. I'm from the U.S., you're from England, and yet we still get along.
Usually.
And you see usually, but you see these huge numbers for both the UK and the US, gigantic numbers, and people are stressed, and there are things happening. They're trying to deal with things. I prefer to think, and I do believe that people are trying to deal with it in good faith. But the internet's erupting with all sorts of stress-induced, just chaos. I mean, people are going nuts, and I understand. I'm going nuts.
Yeah, right.
But in Japan, I won't say there's as many people on the street as there always were. I mean, it's not the case. I mean, basically the rule of thumb is any place interesting to go in the evening is closed.
What have you been trying to do in the evening?
I've been walking around. I do my walks at night and just kind of explore different places. And it's like the convenience stores are open. Even Starbucks are closed, right? It's just everything is closed down, and I think probably appropriately so. But people aren't being locked down, and I've got a park close to my house. It's Nogawa-koen for anybody who wants to Google Earth it. It seems to be almost as popular as it usually is, with families that are kind of doing their own things in separate little bubbles.
Which isn't as crowded as, say, Yoyogi Park in the center of Tokyo.
No, this is a neighborhood park. It's maybe you don't know this. It's a converted World War II American officers golf course.
Ah, right. Yeah, that area in Tokyo around Chofu has a lot of old World War II stuff going on there. I know like the International Christian University used to be an airport for military planes, right? They used to have like a hangar, and I think the main road in was a runway for planes, actually.
Oh, okay. Just to answer your question, I think it feels stressed, and again, nobody's having a great time, but I would say that people are more relaxed and maybe more kind of tolerant of the stress that they feel in Japan than I get the sense of in other parts.
Well, I think Japanese people are famously stoic about stuff like this. I think kind of openly complaining about stuff is not cool. I cycled through Yoyogi Park the other day with my little white mask on, and there were people there. People seemed to divide roughly into two groups. There was just a couple of people maybe walking their dog, and a couple of other people who were just like, to hell with it all. We'll just have a party, and there's like 10 people having a big picnic together. So generally speaking, Yoyogi Park is a lot less crowded than usual, but there are people out. And I cycled through Scramble Crossing in Shibuya, and there's hardly any people there.
I know. They show Shibuya Crossing on the news. It's like that's the crossing that they show in the background whenever they do the weather for anybody who wants to watch the news in Japan. But it's always in the background, and it's just the place. It's that massive intersection in Shibuya, which is always, when the lights turn, it's all the lights turn and everybody just goes wherever they want to go. It's famous, right? It's famous for being crowded. And right now it's like you see like one guy, and he just showed up so that there wouldn't be no guys right on there. He's just there's just trace people walking around mostly because there's nothing to do at night, right?
Yeah.
Did I mention that everything interesting is closed?
And that kind of brings me to my next question, which is, it's not a lockdown. It's a state of emergency, right?
That it is. Yep.
I'm guessing like like me, you have a lot more time on your hands now that you're not having to commute and kind of go out to where you normally go. How have you been filling your time?
So in the interest of full disclosure, I work from home.
Right.
So my normal job is from home. But from time to time, I'll go into the office. Now I live out in Mitaka, which is kind of on the western outskirts of Japan, and it's not that far, but it's about maybe an hour, 15 minutes to get to the office that I work at in Akasaka. And I'll go there maybe once or twice a month, maybe at the most. And when I go in, I mean that's 3 hours of just commute time that's lost, right? And it typically eats up my day compared to working from home, where I just I'll wake up and stumble into my home office. This has not been as much of a shock to me because it hasn't changed my lifestyle, other than the fact that I don't go into the office. It is radically changing the lifestyle of more Japanese people than non-Japanese people. And I mean that. So there's a lot of reasons to love Japanese society. Its willingness to adapt to change is not one of those reasons. and you will find offices that are structurally very similar to what they were in the 1980s, because it's a model that works. It's a naturally social culture, and people feel like we need to get together to get things done together, right? And the together is the most important thing. It's the linchpin. Sorry, it's the keystone and the linchpin.
It's the lynchstone. It's a new word.
It's the linchpin of Japanese society. If you take away that cohesion, Japan falls over, right? And it's not, right? But you've got a lot of people who are used to going into work, and they're used to having this social interaction, and they're stressing. So Mihashi-san, who's a friend of Alex's and mine, a coworker of mine and a coworker of Alex's, strangely enough, she Skyped me. She goes, "What am I going to do? I have to work from home." And I'm like, just wake up early, put on actual real clothes, and but it's a stress, right? This is a stress because it's change, right? And change stresses out human beings in general. But when you have such ingrained traditions, change becomes even more of a trauma, right? And and not going in to work with people in a group makes work very difficult in the short term.
I think it's particularly difficult for families who have kids, and difficult for families who live, have limited space in their small homes. So, a friend of mine, her sister has 2 kids, and the Japanese schools were shut down. Was it since the beginning of April, wasn't it?
Oh no, I think it was even earlier. They've been shut down for a long time, and this is one of the things I think Japan did right. We shut down our schools earlier than many other places. Yeah, and so I've got a daughter, again, in the interest of full disclosure, I've got a teenage daughter, and so now she's here all the time. And in a house that's not, it's not tiny, but it's not huge either. We're all together, and, and isn't that wonderful?
Yeah. Now you can spend some more quality time together. So yes, but sometimes I need some quality time away from the quality time.
Right.
Yeah, right. Okay, so I guess this kind of takes us on to the next question, which is, if you assume this premise is correct, but why does Japan have relatively low coronavirus rates? And it doesn't seem to make sense, because you would have thought that Japan was going to be hit harder than it has been. It's got an older population. It's got dense cities in which the majority of the population live in. Lots of people smoke. This is a smoking country, make no mistake. Japanese government owns a sizable stake in Japan Tobacco. So smoking regulations are very slack. A lot of salarymen smoke here, so that's obviously bad. And also we're really close to China as well. So you would have thought that Japan would have got hit really hard. Now, I've been kind of reading up on this and just thinking about my own experience here in Japan, but I think there's 3 possible reasons that we can kind of talk more in depth about. But basically, it's the 3 reasons. It's a conspiracy, it's good luck, or it's sufficient measures. So the conspiracy theory is that the reason Japan has low coronavirus rates is because it doesn't. It was trying to cover up the figures before the Olympics, and the way they're measuring it is wrong. There's a difference between people dying of COVID and people dying with COVID. But I don't know if that's a really good explanation, because, doctors would have spoken out about this and hospitals would have been overwhelmed, and they haven't been. The second reason is good luck and culture. So basically, the idea is that Japan has inbuilt social distancing. So bowing versus shaking hands, people don't hug here. Japanese people wear masks anyway. Old people tend to isolate anyway. And there's another thing, shaming people who are sick. It's kind of like, it's your fault you got sick. And then the other one was Japan's COVID-19 measures were effective. So they did targeted testing. They tested only people who had high fevers for more than 4 days, I think, and or went overseas, and or had close contact with an infected person, and or had really, really serious breathing problems, right? They closed all large events. They shut Yoyogi Park down for like a month, right, during Hanami season. And as we were talking about, they closed all schools. So that's the kind of background to all of this. So what do you think, Andy? What are the numbers as low as they say? Are we lucky? Are the Japanese particularly into hygiene, unlike other countries? What do you think?
By the way, I just want to state for the record that I thought this was a fun Friday podcast.
No, it's a fun, informative Friday. I shall give you all the facts.
As opposed to a political Friday. Okay, so I'll take the premise, first of all, that the numbers are low. I tend to agree with that. And here's why.
Right.
Because if you can't get past the conspiracy side of it, nothing else matters, right?
Sure.
So let's get that out of the way right now. I think that the numbers might not be as low as the government is publishing. It's possible. I would say that that's probably true for many governments for a lot of legitimate reasons. That it was around for longer than we thought. People who died at home and were never diagnosed. We don't know, right? I don't think that. I suspect, by the way, that there aren't a huge number of people that are being labeled as corona victims that were not, right? I think it's equally possible that there's a lot of people who are not labeled as corona victims that possibly are. So it might even out in the wash. And I don't think that the government, I'll say this, if the government is trying to keep the numbers down, they're doing too good of a job of it to be believable.
Yeah, right.
They're not, because it's so low that even let's say it's twice as much as Japan says it is. It's still a really low number. It's still something.
Actually, I was looking at the figures. Even if it was 10 times as much, it's still relatively low.
Yeah,
the deaths have been in the hundreds. They haven't even hit the thousands yet. Apparently.
No, it hasn't. Yeah. Right, and so I think it is. If they're trying to play a PR game, they're not playing it subtly, right?
Yeah, right.
And I don't. Right. And I'll be honest. maybe it's my inborn belief that human beings are not monstrous by nature.
Right.
I think that's. I think that they're, in the ballpark, or at least trying to be in the ballpark. But I will say this. The number's probably not correct, but whether it's high or low, who can say? So let's assume that number is that we're doing pretty well in comparison. The question is, how can that be if we haven't locked down?
Right.
And here I think we touch on the value of Learn Japanese podcast. Because you're not learning Japanese language, you're learning Japanese people.
Ah, there you go.
So, and I'm certainly not an expert at the language, but I would like to think that I've been around watching enough to know a little bit about the people. Maybe that's, outrageous of me to say, but
You've been around the block a few times.
Been around the block a few times. I'll say this, is that the subtlety of Japanese society goes way under the radar of most Westerners.
Sure.
And what people will see, what people don't even react to as far as social cues are massive social cues to people living in Japan. So, for example,
Right.
when you've got a mayor saying, no, maybe Mitsu no Mitsu, maybe that's a good idea. Which I'm sure is kind of the way that Koike-san, is that right?
Koike. Yeah.
Koike-san said, I'm sure she said it in a way like, this is our recommendation. This is what we think should be. This is my idea. I hope you like it, right?
Yeah.
And, and that is read loud and clear in the context of Japanese society. It's like, if I don't do this, I'm a dame ningen, which is a great Japanese word.
Dame ningen. What does it mean, Andy?
Well, dame means bad.
Yeah.
Ningen is a person.
Yeah.
A dame ningen is a person. And this is the thing. If you call somebody a dame ningen, that's pretty extreme. In fact, I would dare say that's a word you wouldn't use in polite company. You call somebody a dame ningen, there's a good chance you're going to get your dental plan activated, right? But dame ningen simply means a person of low moral character, right?
Yeah. Right.
But see, in a place where societal cohesion is at the center of the society, being a person of low moral character is a supremely bad thing, right? And so, and I guess I'm angling around, but if you take that into the coronavirus, then a suggestion, you know what? We all need to hang together. We all need to protect each other. Well, if you wear a mask, it protects other people from you. You don't want to be a person that spreads the disease, do you? And of course, it puts the onus on you to be a good social player.
Yeah, that's a big one I think in Japanese culture. Like, don't be that guy. I think that's a big one. Yeah, and the word, as you know, for being a nuisance to other people is, Andy?
Mendokusai.
Yes, mendokusai. Another word is meiwaku is a big one. Yeah. Meiwaku or mendokusai is a big no-no in Japan. Yeah, so it's this kind of social, well, I don't want to say conformity so much, but like social pressure to do the right thing. Yeah.
And it's a good thing at times, it's a bad thing at times. I mean, the same social pressure that is probably contributing to keeping these numbers down also certainly contributes to the high suicide rate. Right? So I'm not saying, I'm not deifying Japanese culture by any means, but there is something to be said for societal pressure being worked, being applied for the common good. And I think that's what's happening here.
Well, it seems that ability of Japanese people to pull together and that idea of teamwork in Japanese society is something you really need now.
Yeah, exactly.
As opposed to other people who are like, you should wear a mask, wash your hands and stay home, versus it's the 5G towers transmitting coronavirus around the world. Yeah.
Or it's my, or wearing a mask is somehow infringing on my personal freedom.
Yeah,
right.
Right.
That's so far outside of the realm of Japanese life that it's not even a thing. Right.
Right.
So there's that. I think that that we're not on lockdown, but we're on lockdown. Right.
Yeah.
It's an unspoken lockdown. Right. Because it needs not be spoken. But I'll say this, that it's not a touchy culture. It is about as far from Italy as you possibly can get. Okay?
Right.
It's not a touchy culture. It is, I'll also say, is that we closed the schools early enough that I think that was a big thing, because one of the things that's happening with this is that we're finding out anybody can spread this thing, even if you don't have the symptoms of it, even if you go over it. Who's going to get at this point, we think the people who are not seeing symptoms the most or getting really sick are young people, although there are showing young people are getting sick, but not to the same degree as, for example, older people. Right?
Sure.
And so closing the schools and keeping people at home, keeping the kids at home, well, that's 25% of your population is now isolated.
Right.
All the kids that would catch something from some neighbor's kid, they're not doing it anymore. So that's an early action that I think was a good idea. And everybody's wearing masks, I think, is a good idea as well.
Yeah. I'd agree with that. So apparently, Japanese government, one of their policies was to do a lot of contact tracing. So the idea was, instead of to prevent mass infection, it was to lock down hotspots of infection. So for example, if you had a school or a hospital or a restaurant or a shop where one person was infected, that shop, school, office would be closed down. All the people connected to that person who'd caught it would be contacted, and all of them would be made to self-isolate for 14 days.
Yeah. By the way, so we live in Japan. Japan's right next to Korea. And I think Japan and Korea have at times, at best, a friendly competition, and other times a bitter rivalry. Right. Having enjoyed both places, I don't see why that's the case. But I will say this, that I think that the way that South Korea reacted to a higher threat than Japan ever got. Yeah. Japan hasn't gotten the kind of outbreaks, not yet, that Korea got. Korea, man, has done a fantastic job. They're like, this flamed up in a certain part. They locked it right down. And, it could have gotten terrible over there. And I think South Korea has done a very good job.
Yeah, no, I think they're one of the countries that just dealt with it really, really well. I think we've pretty much covered everything with coronavirus. I think,
thank God. It's such a downer.
It's such a downer. So you know what? I think since we've pretty thoroughly covered it. I'm not a doctor or a virologist or an epidemiologist or a mathematician or a statistician, but here's my opinion.
Or really much of anything, let's be honest.
Or really much of anything, to be honest. I'm a guy with a microphone and an internet connection. Yes.
I will say this. It's an object lesson, though. I see a lot of people. So I live, like I said, I live in Nogawako. I live in a place very close to International Christian University, ICU, which Alex mentioned earlier, which has a lot of international Western people. So the area I live in has more than its fair share of gaijin living in it. And I can tell you this: if I'm walking in the park and somebody is not wearing a mask, they are either a teenager or a foreigner.
Right. Yeah.
If they're a foreigner, it's like, can you please help the image of all the foreigners in Japan? Put on a mask for the love of God.
It's that thing. So years ago, there was this McDonald's advertising campaign on TV. And the basic gist of it was, there's this, I think, American guy who comes to Japan and is taking pictures, and he, for some reason, doesn't know about McDonald's, even though he's a foreigner. And he goes into McDonald's in Tokyo and he eats it, and it's delicious and it's amazing. But there was a lot of the foreigners living in Tokyo were kind of angry because the character he plays is this bumbling idiot. And it was one of those times where people were saying, dude, you're not helping. You're really not helping the image here. It's like, is there lots of racism in Japan? I said, well, if there is, I don't know. But I do know there are a lot of foreigners who aren't helping the situation. Right. Come on, you're letting the side down. Come on.
This has nothing to do with the argument I was trying to make. But I'm on the Tama line. So it's this tiny little rural line. It's a single track. It's very tiny by Japanese standards. And I'm on my station. So I'm on the train, go to the next station. On the platform across from me, as the train was stopping, was a film crew and two foreigners in cheerleader costumes, obviously being filmed for an ad. I'm like, oh dear God, please.
No,
Yes.
stop it.
First of all, you're not going to be proud of yourself for taking this job. And then more importantly, I'm not going to be proud of you for taking this job. But the point, that's not the point that I was trying to make, is it's an object lesson in the two approaches to the individual versus society. If you can get one point across for people who are coming to Japan is this. In the West, and as an American and a Brit, you and I can both attest to this, is there is a great amount of value on self-expression and being true to yourself. And I don't care if I offend you, I'm just speaking the truth. Right. Yeah. And you go out there and knowing who you are is noble, and standing up for yourself in the face of societal pressure is a noble cause and good for you. That's not where you're visiting if you're coming to Japan.
Right.
In Japan, the whole thing is when you come to Japan, everyone is going to start testing you in ways that you don't know.
Right.
Trust the voice of experience on this. You'll go to a place, and you'll meet some new people, and they're going to ask you the requisite questions. How old are you? How tall are you? Where are you from? Blah, 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 all the stuff. Yeah. And they will watch how you work. They will watch how you answer these questions. They're going to watch how you respond. They're going to watch how you act. They're giving you enough rope to hang yourself with. Right. And they're going to watch how you treat the group, not how you're treating yourself. If you're putting yourself in the center of the group and you're being this loud, obnoxious person who's putting the individual over the group, well, congratulations. Now Japan's going to be this fantastic place where everybody listens to what you're saying. But the Japanese side of the equation is, this guy was too loud, we'll hang with him this time, but never, ever again.
Right. Exactly.
Right? And I think this, you could take the same approach to the coronavirus. It's like if people are going to walk around without masks, if people are going to deny science because they don't want to, if people are going to go on their own personal crusades and fragment the society in a panoply of personal self-important opinions, well, the virus is going to have a field day with that.
Yeah,
but if you have a culture that basically does this Trojan phalanx, and everybody gets together and does exactly the same thing, and that exactly the same thing happens to be the thing that keeps the virus from spreading, well, then you're going to get different results. And I think that's what's happening here, is nobody has to tell Japan to become a phalanx. It's in Japanese societal nature to do it. So, Alex.
Yes.
Because I've had enough of this, I'll be honest.
Yeah, no, I wanted to talk about the future after coronavirus, looking to happier days, hopefully 2021 and onwards. My next question to you was going to be, after this bummer every year is over, hopefully sooner than later, what are your plans when the state of emergency has been lifted? What do you want to do?
So what do I want to do?
Yeah.
I have 3 ekimais that I'm going to go to. And I'm going to connect with a lot of people that I have not hung out with. I think,
for listeners who don't know, what is an ikimai?
Oh, God. There you go. So do we know what an eki is?
I think we might do. So an eki is a station, and mae means before the station or next to the station. But that's what it literally means. What is the whole cultural context surrounding it, Andy?
So every train station has its own kind of little orbit of little izakayas, usually a pachinko parlor. Not always, but in the bigger stations, there's a pachinko parlor. There's a koban, which is a police station, which is always good to know if you ever get in trouble. So there's a koban there. There's little restaurants. There's all that stuff. But in any section of Tokyo, the interesting nightlife will tend to congregate around the closest train station, right? So the ekimais, if you go to, for example, let's say Tachikawa. Yeah, okay, Tachikawa is a station off to the west. It's not in It is. Is it in Tokyo? It is in Tokyo.
Tachikawa is in Tokyo, yeah. So I mean, I was going to say like another word for ekimai could be like in English would be maybe like a commuter station. It's usually
but it's the area. I mean, the station.
It's the
is
area
the station.
around it. Yeah,
the eki
it's
is the
area around
station.
it.
The ekimai is the surrounding businesses around that station.
Sure.
Right. And also, any station of any size is going to have its own ekimai, and it's I guarantee it's going to have at least one izakaya.
Yep.
It's going to have at least one kombini.
Yep.
It might have a police station if it's big enough.
A yakitori.
Can I tell you, I live in such a rural place. Oh, there is a yakitori place. It just sucks.
See,
close to mine.
Oh, it's not very good. It's not very good.
It's the chicken. I wouldn't trust it.
And if you're really lucky, it might possibly, usually not, possibly have a karaoke bar.
Yeah. And there's some that like Kichi Joji, which is a kind of a hip kind of nightclub place, has a lot of the different kinds of bars, hostess bars, which is called kabakuri, whatever.
Oh, kabakura, or yeah, basically.
So
and I've got a very small vignette. Andy, as you know, is a connoisseur of the ekimais, and one night we went to an ekimai near his place out in West Tokyo, and we heard some music coming from a basement club. So we poked our head round the corner. Long story short, it's a bunch of, I would say, 50 to 98-year-old people who happen to be into Beatles music. And do you remember this?
Oh yeah, completely.
And everyone's sitting around absolutely drunk, off their heads, and people were taking turns to go up on stage and play Beatles numbers, and the guy who was kind of in charge with this tiny oji-san grabbed my arm and said, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from the UK." Then you can sing the Beatles. I'm like, "Well, no, get up on stage." I'm like, "Well, actually, I don't really want to." "That's not a request." Okay. So he's just like, he manhandles me on stage. "Sing the Beatles now." I'm like, what should we, what did we do? Like yesterday? I can't remember what we did.
You did Hey Jude.
Oh, dude, we did Hey Jude and played in a key that I couldn't sing in, and it was an absolute disaster. And they cheered and they clapped because they were so drunk. It was fantastic. I totally enjoyed myself. Yeah.
By the way,
that was my ekimai experience.
That's not your only ekimai experience.
Oh no, I have many.
By the way, just important, tip, just kind of a additional factoid on that evening was, all the musicians that were playing that music had spent their adult lives perfecting their emulation of the Beatles. And they were the live drummer, the keyboard player, the guitar players, the bass player were nailing it. And they bring this getting drunk British person up there thinking, finally, somebody authentic to give my efforts meaning. And you couldn't even remember all the words to Hey Jude.
And this was a case of me letting the side down. So I apologize to the entire nation of the UK and any Beatles fans out there. And it was brilliant. It was, that no couldn't have come earlier because Hey Jude.
Look at your phone for the lyrics.
Look at the phone. No.
Look at the phone and make it look at the phone better.
I'll tell you, musicians thinking of coming to Japan, just get an album's worth of Beatles songs, under your belt, and you will be very popular here.
Oh, you'll
even
be
today.
Popular.
Okay, the audience may be 97 years old, but hey, Andy.
Yes,
we've been talking for nearly an hour now.
God.
So I think we might wrap this up. Thank you so much. That was awesome.
Oh, thank you. And Corona, be safe. Wear your mask. Stay away. As soon as you can buy a plane ticket, please come to Japan.
Oh, actually, I was going to say.
Oh, what?
Just before we finish, for those people who had their trips cut short or were cancelled by the coronavirus, I'm very sorry, but hopefully you can come in 2021. And my question to you, Andy, is when you have friends coming to Japan, what's a good place to go? Where do you recommend?
Okay, so I have a trick.
Yeah.
So buy the Michelin guide,
Yep.
buy the Frommer's travel guide.
Got them.
Any place that's not listed in either of those books is going to be good.
It's kind of true. So you're of the school of put a blindfold on, get someone to spin you around.
Stop when it smells good.
Stop when it smells good. Yeah. So there are just so many amazing places. Shout out to Warayakiya is a really good izakaya that we always take our friends. Yeah.
There's one chain that's worth its salt in Japan, and it's Warayakiya. If you can find a there's one in Akasaka. There's one in Shinjuku.
Yeah,
Shinjuku.
And Roppongi, I think.
There might be a Roppongi one. Don't go to Roppongi. Okay, here's my recommendation. Don't go to Roppongi.
Don't go to Roppongi.
Stay away. Yeah. And everyone's like, oh, but Roppongi's a nightclub. Don't go. Just don't go. Stay away.
Well, to be fair, Roppongi's got the nice bit, and then it's got the dumb bit. Don't go to the dumb bit.
It's getting dumber.
It's getting dumber and dumber. Oh, well. So there you go. So there's a little... suggestion for people coming to Japan in 2021. Well, anyway, Andy, thank you so much.
Yeah, no.
That was really good fun. I thought it was time to, shake things up and do a fun Friday. I hope this topic wasn't too depressing. This after all is a fun Friday. I hope you enjoyed it. I would say if you have any questions, please feel free to write to me at info@learnjapanesepod.com. I love getting questions. Anything you want about studying Japanese, life in Japan, just to email me and I can answer your question on the podcast. Also, don't forget to check out our new online travel Japanese course. So for all of those people who had their trips cancelled this year and who are coming in 2021, please check that out. That teaches you all the phrases you need to know to travel around Japan and have a great holiday here. And that's at dojo.learnjapanesepod.com. That's dojo.learnjapanesepod.com. And we've got other Japanese courses in there too, including our Turbo Hiragana course and our 5-day Japanese self-introduction challenge, which you should do, Andy. I'll make you do that. I will be back with Ami Sensei in the next podcast.
Yay,
Ami Sensei. And so until then, try to practice and use your Japanese. A little every day is the best way. Have fun, stay safe, stay positive, and see you next time. Mata ne.
Bye-bye, King.